Hello, my name is Ashley, this is Faithful Rattos, and welcome back. So in today's video, I'm actually going to be doing a little bit of a Q&A. I haven't done this for a while, and I just think it's very well overdue, and I just fancied it. It's a very easy video to film, and something that I think a lot of people will enjoy. So let's get into the questions. I have personal questions about me, and then I also have questions about my rats and rats in general that will be later on in the video. So we're going to start with the personal ones and then go on to the rat ones later on. So here we go with the personal questions. First one is, how has your book been received and how do you feel about it all? So my book has done pretty well. I think we're nearing the 90 mark when it comes to how many books I have sold, and this is between Amazon and Mischief Made and personal sales as well, which is really great. I didn't really know what to expect in terms of sales. I actually have possibly the opportunity to have an in-person stall at like a book fair thing, which I'm looking into, which will be really fun. But yeah, it's been really lovely, and the messages I've had about books, the books, well, there will be books eventually, hopefully, but the messages I've had about the book have just been so lovely from adults and from kids. Some of the reviews are just so great. My mum works in a school, an after school club, and the children there are absolutely loving the book, which is wonderful. And I know a lot of people in the rat fancy who have kids have enjoyed the book. Yeah, and it's just been really great to hear personal like reviews of the book. I never expected it to be like a massive, oh my god, it's sold 5 million copies. But yeah, it's been really great. And for me, it was just the personal satisfaction of finishing the book and having it out there in the world, which has been really great. I am really looking forward to when the bluebells come out in a couple of months' time, so I can take some pictures of the book in the bluebells, because obviously there's bluebells on the cover, and it's just been wonderful. If you haven't already got a copy, I would absolutely love it. If you wanted to buy one, you can buy them signed from Mischief Made, and they can ship pretty much anywhere in the world, I think, or you can buy direct from Amazon. Now, there are pros and cons from each seller. For me, buying from Amazon will push it more out into the sort of, algorithm to get more sales. But obviously, if you are purchasing from Mischief Made, you're supporting a small business, and I do get more of a cut from them than I would from Amazon. So it depends on your sort of preference. They are also signed at Mischief Made now, so if you want a signed copy, you can buy from Mischief Made. Somebody also asked, are you going to write more books? Yes, I have in my head the outline for a trilogy of stories about Gorder and Locks, and there are like different themes that I want to sort of touch on with each book. Hi, Godiva. Hello. And themes that I think that are important, experiences in terms of sort of rat care experiences that I think are very helpful to write about for young rat keepers or rat keepers in general. So I'm very excited. I have just about made a start on the second one. I really do need to put more time into it, but I shall be doing that very soon, hopefully. My goal is to get it out this year at some point, so hold me to that, because I am very much sort of feeling the pressure, which I didn't feel with the first one, because I basically told no one about it until I was almost finished. Another question that I got asked is, do I have any hobbies? And the answer is yes. I think everyone has hobbies, or at least they should. I do love reading. I've been trying to get more into that. I actually read 115 books last year, which was so... I was very proud of that. I don't know if I'm going to make it to 100 this year, because I haven't started off quite as well as I did last year. But I've got my fingers crossed for that. I love the theatre. At the moment, particularly, I love the Percy Jackson musical. I've been 21 times. But I just love theatre in general. It's actually what I want to have a career in. So I don't know if I'd consider that a hobby, but I do love going to the theatre, making theatre. I like going for a walk in the woods. I don't know if you call it a hobby, though. Making videos. This is a hobby. Rats are a hobby, but making videos specifically is a hobby I've had for quite a long time. What are your hobbies? Let me know down there in the comments. I think everyone should have hobbies. Then I got a question about the budgies. How are they getting on? The budgies are doing very well. They are still quite shy, and we're still working on bringing them bigger up in their confidence. Oh, Marissa, I don't know if you should be climbing when you got a surgery. So the Bridges are doing great. They are still quite shy, so we are like working on getting them comfortable to being around people, getting them comfortable around our hands, especially. That's a big one. I'm also working on trying to get them to eat their vegetables. Ravioli in particular doesn't like to eat his vegetables, which is very annoying. So we are working on that. That's going to be a slow process, I think. I don't think they were really given very much vegetables. Well, Muffin, I don't think he was given very much vegetables in his home, the one that let him out. I do know that they ate at the rescue, so I don't quite know why they've decided they don't want to eat vegetables with me, but that is something that we're working on as well. So I was also asked about doing a tattoo tour, which I'm going to tell you about the tattoos that I've got, and then I will try and overlay some footage or photos of each tattoo that I have. So the first tattoo that I got is on my inner arm, lower inner arm, on my right arm. Most of my tattoos are on my right arm. It is of a rat skull with sunflowers, and I chose this design because I wanted something that even if I regretted the tattoo, I wouldn't regret the design, and I knew something to do with the rats, I would never regret that. So I got this tattoo, and it was sort of to symbolize sort of all the rats that I have lost and will lose. I love sunflowers, and so it just fit perfectly. This is a tattoo I had in my head whilst I was trying to find the tattoo artist that I liked. And now that I've found the tattoo artist that I like, I don't think I'm going to go to anyone else because I really like the cohesive look. Her name is Aga, and she works at Evergreen Studios in Coventry. If you like the design of my tattoo, she's an absolutely lovely, lovely, lovely human and has done some wonderful tattoos for me. So that was the first one that I got. The second tattoo that I got is on the top of my shoulder, again on my right arm, and it is the bench from His Dark Materials. It is a bit of a spoiler to sort of explain what the bench means, but it's very meaningful for me, and because I was in a long distance relationship for a long time, it sort of has that level of significance. And underneath it says every atom of me and every atom of you, which is a quote from the book. This tattoo was actually like ripped off by somebody. I posted this on a Reddit thread. I think it was a His Dark Materials Reddit thread. Then I got a notification that somebody else posted a very, very, very similar tattoo, and like they slightly changed some things, but like not enough to make that it was like their own inspiration. It was kind of cringe, to be honest. And on that day, I also got two little tattoos. So I got the outline of Plum's ears, which is on my left wrist, and I also got Rosen's footprints, which are on my shoulder, my right shoulder. And those are two rats that I lost as babies at the time. Those are the two rats that I had lost as babies and felt that I'd lost them way too soon. Plum, I always told him I'd never forget his silly ears, so that really made sense for the outline. And Rosen, I just felt like getting the footprints would be really nice. So that is the second tattoo that I got. Now, this is where it kind of gets a bit confusing because I kind of forget the order in which I got them. So I think the next ones were on the front of my arm and on the back of my arm, sort of the top part. I have a portrait of Remy, who was one of my heart rats, who was very, very special to me. I originally just asked for a rat sniffing a dandelion, and then sort of the dandelion seeds sort of flying away. And the artist, Aga, asked me, is there a specific rat you want me to base this on? And I went, oh, yeah, obviously Remy. So I have Remy on the front of my arm, and on the back of my arm, I did get a tattoo of my favourite Jewish value, which is Tikkun Olam. It means repair the world, and so it has a world that's sort of like broken and turning into dust, and it says Tikkun Olam in the Yiddish, and then in the English transcription. That's on the back of my arm. Then the next tattoo that I got is from my artist Flash Sheet. It is of a dragonfly, and dragonflies are meaningful to me because, as you know from my channel, when I went through my Bordetella outbreak, I actually had one of my rats post-mortemed, and his name was Akatosh. I can't quite remember off the top of my head, but there was a lot of instances of seeing dragonflies, and so when I saw that on my artist's Flash, I just knew that I had to have it. Then the next tattoo is again on the back of my arm, and it is of two Polaroid pictures. They're actually based on film photos that I took. One of them is of the cliffs at Bempton Cliffs. We went there on holiday, well, we went to sort of the Yorkshire coast on holiday, and we spent one day at Bempton, and I just absolutely loved it, and I just loved the photo that I took. I thought it was very dramatic and very, very lovely photo. And then also there's a photo of my grandma's Shabbat candles that I took that is on my little Polaroid, the second one. And then the next tattoo, I think I also got the Tzaddik Teared Off at the same time as that, which is on the inside of my arm. It's just some Hebrew text. And Tzaddik Teared Off means justice, justice you shall pursue. It's actually a Bible quote, but it's a quote that a lot of left-wing, progressive Jewish people use as a sort of like rallying call, and that I felt very drawn to that phrase, especially with everything going on in the world at the time now. So I have that on the inside just above my elbow crease. And then the next tattoo is on the front of my arm, on the front of my lower arm. So this is like the first tattoo I got on the front of my lower arm. And that is Riptide from Percy Jackson. So that's Percy Jackson's sword, and the subtle knife from his Dark Materials. They're sort of in a cross, and there's some waves and there's some sort of dust. If you know any of those two stories, you know why that's relevant. Two of the most sort of important book series to me, one from my childhood and one from my early adulthood. That was really important. This was obviously a custom design that my tattoo artist made. She did a wonderful job, and I absolutely love the placement where it is. It really sort of goes with my anatomy, which is really great. And then the last tattoo, my most recent tattoo, is on the sort of back of my lower arm, and it is of a rat tooth fairy. This is from a flash sheet that my artist did, and I just knew that that was one for me. So a bit on a whim, actually, that one. I went and got that one. And those are, oh, I missed that one. I can't quite remember when I got it, but I got it on one of the days of the other tattoos. I have one of my other rat, Coulson, who we lost too soon. I have his ears on my right wrist, so they sort of match where my ones on the left wrist are. And those are all of my tattoos. Okay, now on to the rat questions. I've been sitting in front of the girls' cage, and I had Marissa, who was in surgery, having a little bit of free room, and all the rest of the girls felt jealous. So if you see the cage door swinging towards my head, that is why. On to the rat questions. How long did you own rats before breeding them? So I had owned rats, I want to say maybe 1.5 to 2 years before I decided I wanted to breed. But when I had decided that, yes, this is like, now's my time, this is the right time to start properly and seriously looking into that, I think I'd owned rats for 4 years. And at that point, that's when I started to build a girl group, so I knew how it was to have does as well as having bucks, because I think it's very important that before you breed any animal, you have them for their entire lifespan, and you know that whole experience, and you know that you can sort of commit to the lifespan of any rat that you do breed. So I think that's really important. So for me, it was 2 years before I knew I wanted to breed, and then 4 years before I decided it was the right time to properly start looking into it, and then more like 5 before I actually bred that litter, if that makes sense. Then I also got a question, how is the pie rat getting on? This is about my little rat Parley, who has 3 legs and half a tail. I don't know if she is about here at the moment, but she is doing absolutely wonderfully. She is just I'm going to say spunky, but that's the word that like Americans use, but she is like, she just has a lot of personality. She has a lot of grit and determination. She's just a wonderful, wonderful little rat. She doesn't have any problem getting around this cage setup, and she's just very sweet and affectionate as well. I think she's so wonderful, and I'm so glad that I have her. Intros have worked out pretty well. They're now back in the main cage after, I don't know how many, it was about a week that they were in intros. So yeah, she's doing wonderfully, and I'm really happy that I have her. Somebody asked, how do I choose registered names? So it's a little bit different in rats than it is with other species where you have to register with the club. That's not something that happens with rats. We don't have like a register. So no rats have like registered names, but a lot of people use show names, which are different to their sort of pet name or their call name that some other species refer to that as. They, not everybody has different names. I just like it. I think it's fun. I think it's exciting, and I think for them, It's not, I don't know, I don't think they know about it, but I think I give all of my rats show names, even if they're rescues, even if they're never going to go to a show, because I just think it's fun, and I think they all should have one. So usually I will start off with a name that I like as their just general name, and then their show name is usually somehow related to their given name. So for example, Parlay, her show name is Pirates Code. Well, her show name is Pipistrelle Pirates Code. So show names will have the breeder, their prefix at the start, and then their name. So her show name is Pipistrelle Pirates Code, which obviously is in relation to Parlay, and you get the drift. You catch the drift. So usually their show name will be something in relation to their name. If it's based on a character in a series, it's probably an epithet about that character. So, for example, Azora, her show name is Kynareth, Queen of Dawn and Dusk, because that is what Azora in Elder Scrolls, that's what her sort of like domain is, I guess. So, yeah, that's how I choose my registered names, my show names, because I just like it. I think it's fun. I like having the long names on certificates. Some show secs probably don't like writing them out, but I like having them. And I think all my rats deserve to have one, even if they'll never go to a show. The next question is, how do you create a good substrate for holding burrows, like a good mix of substrates? So personally, in my opinion, the best substrate for holding burrows is bioactive soil that's properly maintained, that's not too dry. After that, I would say something like, what do they call it? There's Snowflake Supreme, and then there's another one that is found in Scotland and the north of England called Cars Billington. I think those are good wood shavings for holding burrows. If you don't have access to either of those, or you don't particularly want sort of to use just wood shavings, you do have a couple of options. But the main sort of premise to find a good substrate that will hold burrows is you need to find a mix that will sort of build all the textures. So you want big pieces, small pieces, and long pieces. And to get this, you can mix something like a paper-based bedding with like a cardboard shred or a big wood shaving, and then mix in hay. Hay is really the thing that helps burrows to be quite sturdy. So that's what I would recommend. I'd recommend just playing around with different mixes of substrates and seeing what works best. If you don't want to mix, usually your smaller wood shavings hold burrows pretty well. I use in my trays and in my temporary cages, I use Pure Flake Extra, which is a spruce shaving. That works really well. That holds burrows really well. That's what my does made most of their nests out of in their birthing cage. They made wonderful nests. They had hay and some other sort of nesting materials too, but I think Pure Flake Extra does hold burrows pretty well. I think it's a lot of trial and error to see what works for you. I can give you advice, but it's also like what you have available to you and things like that. So the next question is, where did you get your wooden wheel from? And I actually got my wooden wheel secondhand from somebody, but it is from a company called Getzu. I usually only use this in free roam. I don't put this in a cage because I don't think it's going to last very long in a cage. It obviously has a stand as well, so in a rat cage, it's not so great. Marissa? Yeah, so it's from Getzu, but I didn't buy it from Getzu. I wouldn't recommend wooden wheels inside a rat cage. I'd only recommend them for free roam. Another person wanted tips for feeding rats with different appetites. So if you have a rat that's eating too much and even reducing the food intake that the whole group gets isn't helping, what I would do is I would take them out for like 20 to 30 minutes whilst everyone else is eating, let everyone else have a good go at it, and then let them in to eat as well. I would also consider giving those who need extras outside of that, whether that is just extra mix or if you're also giving them high calorie food like Wait Up Baby or Moo Mix or something similar. If you want any more specific advice for your situation, do message me on Instagram and I can give you some better advice by asking you sort of more context of your situation. It seems like you are having a little bit of a nightmare with that. Next question is something I've answered quite a lot of my channel, and that is, how did you get into rats? Which is something that I think is a very interesting thing to ask because lots of people have lots of different avenues. But basically, Rat Dad, my boyfriend fiance, who I moved in with 5 years ago when we first got rats, had a rat when he was a teenager. Actually, The family adopted 2 rats. One of them ended up being a girl, one ended up being a boy. There was a litter and all that jazz. The litter, the babies were given back to the pet shop, which nowadays I would just not recommend that, but they didn't know any better. And he loved this rat so much. And so when we moved in together and we wanted to get a pet, we were thinking about all the options that we had. And our landlord didn't want pets that weren't caged. He said, if you want to get a caged pet, anything is fine. However, if you want to get a cat or a dog, I do want an extra deposit for that. And we didn't have the money. We didn't really want to pay an extra deposit. So we were like, what can we do? And that's when Adam, Rat Dad, suggested getting rats, and the rest is history. We did get our first 2 from Pets at Home, which I would not recommend and I wouldn't do again, but they were wonderful rats, and they were perfect rats to get us into rats in general, and then it became my entire personality. And now we are here where I'm breeding rats. And yeah, that's the story of how I got rats. Somebody asked tips for first-time rat owners, and I could bog down this entire video with so many tips, so I'm not going to, but I will direct you to some of the videos I have on my channel that will help. I have videos on feeding, on substrate, on how to set up a cage, on everything that you need when you first buy rats. I've got so many helpful videos for first-time owners that if you just take a look at my channel, you will see so many helpful videos that I just can't answer all of those tips in this video. What I will say is always be open to learning more. Always be open to improving, and never settle. Never settle, oh, this is fine, so I'm not going to improve XYZ. This is fine, now okay. If you can do better, always do. And that's probably my biggest tip. Also, make sure you have a vet fund. That's also a really important tip. And other helpful videos on my channel, I have a video where I talk about mistakes that I made, where to get rats from, like loads and loads of helpful videos out there on my channel for you to look at if you want tips, if you're a first-time rat owner. The next question is there anything you think isn't talked enough about, like between rat owners? And this is a really interesting question, and I've had to think like long and hard, and I think there are a few things. One thing, I don't think we talk enough about death and what we do after. I'm very open about what I do, and I sort of share that on my channel because I'm just in general quite open, but I don't think we all talk about that enough, and just how different people have different boundaries, and that's okay. I also don't think we talk enough about making sure that you are also comfortable with your breeder. Obviously, your breeder needs to be comfortable with you, but you should also be comfortable with what your breeders are doing. And it's absolutely okay to ask your breeder questions about how they do things if they're not as open as I am, sort of like posting on social media all the time. That is really okay, and you should be doing that. And I also don't think we talk enough about the fatigue, I guess, when it comes to health issues. Yes, we talk about the fatigue of losing rats and how that has an impact, but we don't talk enough about how them being unwell takes an impact. And that's something that I struggle more with than if they were to just die. I struggle with them being sick a lot more. And that's actually a question that somebody asked, how do you cope with health issues? And it's very difficult. I find this more difficult than just dealing with death, because you're worried about their active quality of life and how they're doing and will they get better. And I find that way more difficult. I think the biggest tip that I have for that is just to take every sort of hour at a time. Don't catastrophize what will happen in the future. Are they okay now? Is it okay now? And just go from there, because I think otherwise you can get stressed out by the what ifs and the what will happen when sort of things, and just deal with what you have on your plate at that time and see what happens and go from there. But it is difficult, and it's something that I struggle with as well. I definitely have a better sort of routine and a better coping strategy for death, but when it comes to just dealing with the illnesses, I really struggle with that as well. How did you get into breeding, and where are your breeding rats from? So my initial foundations were from Alpha Centauri Stud and from Novigrad Rattery, and I do have some rats from Purple Whiskers Rattery as well. I will say I would never ever breed from a feeder breeder's rats, because they just aren't keeping enough data on those rats to know what's going on health-wise, temperament-wise in the line, and I would never recommend that you breed from feeder rats or pet shop rats or rescue rats at all. It's just not a good idea, or pet shop rats even as well. I got into breeding because I got into showing, and I sort of joined the fancy at large, and I just saw how important breeding was, and I knew it's something that I wanted to help with eventually. And so as time went on, that's how I sort of got into it. There wasn't sort of one event that happened that made me go, yes, I want to breed rats. It was just being around some really great breeders that I wanted to also put my expertise into the field as well. I don't know whether you were possibly asking, like, what did I physically do? And I do have a video about how I prepared to be a breeder. I will try and remember to link it. But yeah, that is how I got into breeding, I guess. And then the last question that I'm going to answer in this Q&A video, which I hope you enjoyed, is tips for encouraging wheel use. Now, I will say wheels are big and they're loud and they're noisy and they can be very stressful to some rats. So it's really important that you sort of recognize that especially if it's new to them, it will be quite scary. It's very important to realize that it is going to be scary. And if they aren't a huge fan at first, you are going to have to be patient. And then after that, you just have to get them used to it. So just keep it in the cage, even if they aren't using it. And what you can do, what I did when I first got my wheel and my boys didn't want to run on it, I would put, like, I think it was malt paste at the time, but any sort of like liquidy treat around the wheel, so that when they went onto the wheel, they would have to walk on the wheel to get to the treats. And that eventually worked. And also seeing other rats use the wheel is helpful, so they sort of realize it's not that scary. And then also having a wheel from a young age really does help. So get a wheel, and you may find that your older rats never really love it, but that your younger rats may love it, and then you may sort of build up the group to use it. So yeah, those are my tips for getting them to use a wheel. I just have a group of little does here trying to steal this massive cake, and it's just too big, and now they're having a fight. They're like dragging it. Yeah, so that is my Q&A. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you like this sort of content, if you like me and you like me talking about rats and my rat keeping experience, do stick around and subscribe, like, do all the things, comment any answers to the questions that I was asked down below, and I'd love to have a chat with you. Yeah, so